Dungeons and Dragons, Satan's Game. These are the experiences of two individuals as we fight our way through various evil and blood-soaked horrors known as D&D. Look and weep at the evil that awaits us. Will we survive the horrors?
I hope so.
Spoiler warning for those of you who dare to set foot. You will be spoiled.
Oh, yes.
But we'll see you at the D&D game. Greetings, you're watching D&D Horror. Another episode with SeptumSin and Kodabuki Jake. Today we're covering the 1983 film by Oda Richter, Skullduggary. So, this may or may not be a legal copy of this disc. It is a pressed disc. It does say don't copy it, but all it has is the movie on it, and it's kind of crappy quality. There is an official VHS, but all these are out of print.
Get used to disappointment.
But this wasn't expensive. I got this for $14 once I found out about its existence.
But it looks like such a collector's item there.
It does, doesn't it? Looks like one of those ones you get at the Dollar Tree.
Yes, yes indeed.
So,
jeez, I haven't been there in a minute.
This takes place in 1983. This film was, and this is about a year after Mazes and Monsters. We are in the Satanic Panic.
It does start with a scene that takes place much, much earlier, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, in medieval times at that point.
Yes, much earlier.
Or it's in the game. I'm not quite sure whether it's supposed to be in the game or it's supposed to be reality and it's supposed to be a curse. Which we'll get into when we talk about story, but this does take place in this came out in 1983, so it's a year after. Definitely there are Satanic Panic feelings in this. And that anti-D&D sentiment. We also have our returning Wendy Crewson and our Canadian theme. So my wonder is that there may be many more of these types of films out there.
Yes, for some reason, Wendy Crewson's agent thought that she should do dozens of these films back to back to back.
I love it when a plan comes together.
No wonder they're not in existence.
I don't know. It's weird.
But this is about this guy named Adam. He works at a costume shop, and at the end of the days, he plays this kind of game. It's sort of like a castle in the middle, and they assign roles, and it kind of, modern game that's kind of like is more like Hero Quest. Hero Quest is one that was like that, where you kind of take assigned roles and then you go through a dungeon adventure.
Okay.
Essentially, he starts taking this a little bit too real and starts killing off his game targets in real life.
As you do.
There are some elements that are present in there. There's a little medieval scene at the beginning where you've got this kind of puppet involved and these apples, and one of them is poison, one of them is not, and this kind of recurs throughout, and some sort of curse. So there may be some sort of link to this. And there is a Dr. Evil, and he actually is running the game, you find out. So, what do you think? What do you think of the plot of this?
Such as it is. Full disclosure, I had a very difficult time trying to make it through the first screening of this movie.
It's such an easy film to watch.
Watch it when you're alert if you want any chance of making sense of it.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die. Please.
I did go back and rewatch about half of it on YouTube. And watching it when I was more alert, I was able to follow it better.
Yeah.
It still is a film that is not going to be the easiest thing in the world to follow. honestly, I don't think that the filmmakers entirely knew what they were doing when they made this film.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
It's interesting in some ways. The plot, as I understand it, is kind of a very, 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 very thinly written slasher film with an attempt at a somewhat unique-ish premise.
Yeah.
And some of the way the film is put together is actually relatively unique and interesting. But much of how the film is put together is kind of like, y'all didn't really know what you were doing, did you?
They just didn't care.
They probably did.
But that was the one thing I was trying to figure out, is whether there was a satanic angle to this or whether it was just all in the dude's head. Because it really wasn't made clear to me. Or it could be both. He could just be some crazy guy with some satanic stuff manipulating him. But what do you think?
I mean, it definitely feels like he has embraced what could be called, I guess, a satanic agenda.
Yeah.
Whether it is intended to be shown as him actually being corrupted or him simply going nuts.
He goes quickly one way or the other.
He goes quickly one way or the other, and whether it's intended this way or that is very hard to tell. I really am not sure. And I do think, I believe we had Tom Haverstock in the main role. Honestly, this is in some ways, it gave me much of the same frustration, but in very different ways, of course. It gave me much of the same frustration as I got from Hitchcock's Marnie. Where I felt like if Tippi Hedren had really had her head in the game, she probably could have portrayed mental illness much more effectively and made the film much better because of it. And in this case, if the guy had a better grasp on, well, nuance, emotion, any number of things,
yeah,
he could have given the character. It's kind of a one-note character, although I guess you could say maybe the pitch of that note changes a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
And that's really it. Or the key, I guess I should say, probably changes a little. That's it. So it's kind of one of the reasons the movie was hard for me to follow was I had no idea what the dude's real motivations might actually have been. And if they were trying to play coy with, well, maybe he's crazy and maybe he's possessed, well, they failed.
And then there was another film that had some similarities that came around the time that was a little bit more better known. It was about a guy who he was kind of an actor, and he dressed up in different type of makeup to kill people as different monster movies. And it was really good. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head.
Was that one we covered?
No, but I know that Dave gave me a copy.
Okay.
And I had a copy on my own for a while. But it was a really good film.
And that was a plotline in Dura, wasn't it?
Maybe. But yeah.
You know, I think they called him the Hollywood Killer.
And this one's weird, though. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, there's a scene where he dresses up as the Easter Bunny and kills somebody with a switchblade.
That was kind of funny. But, I mean, even our previous discussion on Mazes and Monsters, even though it's clear that Tom Hanks has gained a great deal of skill as an actor since that film, he did a better job of portraying a character with multiple angles to him than this one did.
I mean, there was no doubt left in Mazes and Monsters that this was...
Yeah, he was nuts.
He was off his rocker, and that was why.
Yeah.
And this one, especially the ending. At the very end of this, you've been warned at the beginning about spoilers, but at the very end of this, they're kind of like, the group has got it around the table, he's disappeared, so they've got the suit of armor that he wore that they put back together, I guess to honor the crazy serial killer that's was,
as you do.
You know, and then the knight comes to life and stabs him, and inside the knight is the puppet that they've had kind of appearing throughout. And
there's Dora.
There are a couple of like weird appearances throughout the movie that don't make a lot of sense. Like one, you've got the Dr. Evil or whatever his name is, where he's putting the puzzle pieces together. He's the kind of mascot at the party. He's running the game.
And it's like, if I'm remembering correctly, the puzzle, I want to say, is like Adam and Eve.
Yeah, it was an Adam and Eve type thing. They even had an Adam and Eve play going on in the film. And I guess you could say that those two are Adam and Eve, if you want to go through another theme. You also had the puppet. That was a recurring character.
Yeah.
This kind of jester puppet. Mm-hmm. And you had this weird
looking
magician guy.
Also creepy
that
looking.
Came in. He has his own soundtrack, even. And I still don't know what to deal with them as. And there was another dude who was a janitor.
World's worst magician. But somehow, even just like Adam, somehow is apparently catnip to the ladies.
Yes.
Even though he is dour, standoffish, does not smile, has the personality of a wet rag. He is just plain mean and nasty much of the time. There's nothing there that's set, and he's even not that great looking, and yet women are all over him. This magician, and they're all
over Adam even more.
well, that's what I was talking about. But this magician is like, when he goes on stage to perform, people are making this big fuss about it. Like, oh man, that's so great. And what we see, we're like,
okay, well.
Is that magic? Is that even a trick?
I guess we missed the good parts.
We must have.
We were elsewhere at the time. Where Adam's getting seduced by various women throughout.
To paraphrase, the Usual Suspects will say, the greatest trick this magician pulled was convincing the world his magic doesn't exist.
Yes. There was also one other guy. My favorite character, this janitor who had a tic-tac-toe game on the back of his shirt, and it was being filled in as we went through. Every time he'd show up at one of the killing sites, and he'd have one more in there, and then the game ends in a standoff.
So was he supposed to represent the zombie janitor?
You know, there's a part of me that I think is the representation of the game itself, of who's winning, and it ends in a stalemate. And again, this is just me guessing, because that's really what you got to do in this.
Yeah.
It's kind of a stalemate between the two, because he doesn't get caught in the end.
Yeah.
But he doesn't finish his quests either.
Yeah.
So it's there. I mean, he even comes back in one quest after he kills a nurse, and he says, "I have killed the woman in white. Here's the proof," and like takes the sample of her clothes, and they're like, what's wrong with you? Right. But
and then like, what was that? The other dude, the smartass, says something like,
"Yeah, the womanizer guy in the."
I can't remember. But he was mocking his proof, like he was saying, "Well, why don't you go do this and show us this to be the proof of it?" Or I can't remember what he said, but anyway.
Well, let's go into acting. Such as it was.
Such as it was.
I mean, Wendy Crewson does an okay job. I feel like the direction was better in Mazes and Monsters, so she came across a little bit more wooden, but not all that bad. I mean, no worse than anybody else in the film. To be certain.
that film had its flaws, no doubt about it. But it definitely seemed a little better directed.
Well, as far as acting is concerned, I would say I would put it in the lower end, acting-wise.
Yes.
That magician was stiff as a board, but I guess that's how he's supposed to come across.
Now, one part that actually really did, and that's why I said before, there were unintentionally funny parts. And I do think the magician did give us a little bit of that. Oh, there's another Skullduggary that had Burt Reynolds in it?
Yes, there is.
Nice.
Wasn't like a 1970s one, yeah.
1980, I think is what I said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what was I going to say? You mentioned the janitor. He doesn't really do much, but
he's there. He's a fun set dressing.
2.6 rating. Nice.
High rating.
on 400 votes. David Calderizzi is our sorcerer. I wouldn't call him a sorcerer supreme.
Actually, I'd say that Dr. Evil does a decent job.
No, wait.
You're talking about sorcerer.
No, sorcerer was... Oh, that's someone else. Simcoe was the magician. James Coburn, but not the James Coburn you're thinking. Definitely not that one.
He's been in a lot of stuff.
He has. He's apparently still... But
I thought these were decent performances for what we were getting.
Yeah.
We're going to come across worse, similar performances as we go through this.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll come across worse performances. We'll definitely come across similar ones.
Big surprise, Thomas Haverstock has very few credits to his name.
What?
In fact, he only has one more after this, Fall from Innocence.
Ooh, he plays Bob.
Yes. And then, I'm sorry, I'm just so curious about this now. And our director, Oda Richter, only had one more directorial
Said
credit.
everything he needed to say. This film was almost everything he needed.
That's his story, and he's sticking to it, right? But yes, I wanted to mention there was one scene. I can't even remember who they were supposed to be playing. But it was sort of like it was like a Romeo and Juliet takeoff of like this. I think it was like a secret prince. No, it is 1970 for the. Sorry, it's like a secret prince, and he's dealing with this love for this woman who, if she knew who he was. It would cause all kinds of problems. It's like I said, sort of a star-crossed lovers kind of thing. And the prince, it was one of the few times where I came really close to laughing out loud in this movie. You know how people like to kind of make fun, the way that they make fun, the way that they mock old school William Shatner.
Oh, yeah.
This guy came across like he was doing a bad William Shatner impression, but he was playing it absolutely straight. You got the impression that he's just that bad, and that it was like unintentionally bad. Yeah. And it was kind of hilarious.
And it led to our guy's first costume change,
yeah.
And later his first kill when he was reminded of the poison apples, so he magics a snake around her.
Yeah.
Which turns out that she died of some sort of stroke instead, but it was kind of weird. Snake stroke.
Yes, indeed. Turn that around, you got a very different movie. Anyway, the early parts where he's basically doing costuming for the play, him and Cousin's character, I believe she is his colleague in they
work together in the business.
At that point, he's less of a douchebag. He comes across as still not someone that I think most people would give a second thought about.
Yeah.
But
he reacts normally
more
when he's
normally.
not in his weird, like, psychotic state. He kind of reacts normally to people.
Yeah.
Like, as a couple that want matching bunny costumes, you could tell he's kind of entertained by the whole thing.
Yes.
And doesn't kill them. So, hey.
Now, I have to admit, and maybe I'm twisted, that what we saw was not what I originally thought they were asking for.
Yeah, different bunny costume. I'm blind. But let's move on to special effects and production design. Let's see. There's not a lot of special effects here,
Not really.
but there is a whole lot of production going on. And there's a lot of editing going on that is very poor.
Yeah. I mean, again, our boy Adam works in a costume shop, and
I take advantage of that.
costuming is not bad. The costuming is one of the film's stronger points,
Even ends at a costume party.
and you get the impression that they spent a lot of money on the costume budget. Probably money that should have been spent elsewhere, but and the overall, like, set design, the location design, like location use and whatnot, was pretty good. Overall, they could have done better. On the budget they had, they probably could have done a lot worse.
And I mean, the two worst things about this were probably the cinematography and the editing. Of course, I don't know. Maybe it's just the quality of the film has deteriorated.
I was going to say, it's hard to say.
But the lighting was horrid. And
Yeah.
and so there's only so much that I could blame on film deterioration on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it fell in both. And then the editing didn't make the plot any more coherent.
No. The editing was a big part of the source of our what the hell reaction.
The painful nature of this film.
Yeah.
But and then of course, there were a couple. Like I said, the highlights to me were the costumes and actually the number of sets. There were a lot of sets they used for like a TV movie. I'm thinking it was a TV movie. So I guess as far as things go, as a TV movie from Canada, this is probably the best we could do at the time. Well, that's not true. Mazes and Monsters I thought was an edge better, but I found it slightly entertaining just because it was so weird. But Mazes and Monsters was far more coherent.
Yeah.
But speaking
I mean,
of...
hell, just the set decoration for that one dude's room alone was...
yeah, that is true.
And not to mention his hats. His hats whooped this movie's ass.
And that Gorgon costume was pretty good. The monster costume was actually pretty decent quality. Well, what do you think of the music? I thought it was substantially creepy at points, and it held. Actually, I like the music better in this one. I do Mazes and Monsters.
I actually very much liked the music. Yes, Mazes and Monsters, the music was serviceable for the most part, but it was jarringly weird at times and not really in a good way. This one had music by Eugene Ilin. Eugen Ilin. Okay.
Eugenics.
He's Czechoslovakian. Apparently he passed away just a couple years after this movie came out.
It was too good. It was his peak.
Let's see if he did have one more after this.
30.
30, yes.
That's a TV series.
Mostly he scored Czech productions, but it really... I don't know how much of the music was original and how much was found pieces, but I do know that they used it quite effectively. It was very, at times, creepy. At times, rather jaunty. And And for the most part, they used it well. And a good percentage of the entertainment I got from the movie was in part with the music or from the music.
They even had their own song, Skullduggary, in this.
Yes.
So, which
an odd one.
Very much felt like, actually it felt almost behind the times from when it was filmed. So it was there. But I'll play a little excerpt of that one here. I mean, not pretty well jamming here. Skullduggary. But and the great thing about this, it's probably different from as we go. We'll probably have some music we can play, but as we get to more recent stuff, we probably won't be able to.
Yeah.
Like we have one in the future where there's a David Bowie song played, which we will definitely not be able to play. But so that's Skullduggary. So let's do our before we break down our ratings. We'll do our final opinions of it. So I'll go first on this. So Skullduggary, to me, exemplifies these types of films from the early 80s. This whole early D&D is bad, satanic panic type films. It tries its best to paint things in a negative light, but in many ways kind of falls flat. Much like Mazes and Monsters, I don't feel like the point quite fell in that direction. And that's a good one. That's a good thing. I really think that these films could be salvageable. I think that there are some entertaining bits. With better editing, maybe a new cut of this film could emerge that would be a little bit more competent. How about your final thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure if a little more competence would necessarily be enough to save the film.
The butthole cut.
Yes, we want the butthole cut. We must have it.
Maybe we get some. Maybe the nurse actually does go down to her stuff. I mean, she does make out and have sex with a gorilla in that, which that gorilla doctor does get a lot of ladies in this film.
It's crazy. It's
crazy because it's true.
Yep. Well, they're saving that for the 4-hour Zack Snyder cut.
Oh, yeah. God.
Well, it's, I feel like somewhere way down the road, it might be nice to give the film another look when I can watch the whole thing through, and maybe then my opinion will change. But right now my opinion is that the movie, rather, film is too strong a word, I think. The movie is too disjointed, and too much of it falls flat for it to really be all that entertaining or something to be recommended. It has its moments, and it has certain good things about it, and if nothing else, you could put it on and let the music play while you nap, and that might be good. But there's really not a whole lot here that you would miss if you gave it a miss, honestly.
Well, I think the line on the front cover says it best.
Yeah?
It started as a game until death started playing.
Sure, we'll go with that.
No, sir, I don't like it.
Alright, well now we're at the final part. The part where we give this a rating. Every episode, we take this and we rate on two areas. The tabletop RPG rating and the LARPing rating. On 1 to 10, we talk about accuracy to tabletop role-playing or LARPing, and kind of the the feel for it as well. We also try to look at it as like, does this feel kind of a legit tabletop experience or LARPing experience? So I guess I will start myself. So let's talk about the tabletop RPG experience. They are playing a tabletop RPG-ish, but it feels more like a board game than an actual D&D session. It is a kind of cool-looking one, and there are games that are similar to it, but though I do feel it is D&D adjacent. Because D&D itself started off as a strategy board game, Chainmail. It is... I don't feel like it is quite D&D itself. Matter of fact, I still don't quite understand the game that they're playing.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to watch this again. I will give that a 5 out of 10. I feel like it's not going away from it. I feel like there is a loose connection. I can start to see the connection, but I don't feel like it's that strong. Mazes and Monsters was a much stronger connection. So, my rating is a 5.
Okay.
So, your tabletop rating.
And if you recall, Mazes and Monsters set the bar pretty low in terms of connection
It did.
to the game.
I think I gave it a 6. You gave it a 5 in yours.
I feel like that may be the case. Given that I got almost no connection whatsoever on my first viewing between the events of the game and the events of the film proper, I got it when I went back and rewatched parts of it.
It took you a rewatch to get it. Yeah.
On the first viewing, I got almost none of that. Also, I did not recognize the game they were playing. As you said, there are games like that, but none of the ones I'm familiar with, nothing that I would consider RPG, tabletop gaming, or even really, it had more of the feel of what I've seen of video game RPGs, but even that is kind of a little bit tenuous, and we're specifically looking at tabletop rather than video games.
And I feel like the prominence, I admit, which is part of the rating, is not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am torn on where I should put this exactly. And while I run the risk it maybe being unfair to the film, I think I'm going to put it at about a 3, really.
Oh, God.
It was a tenuous rating, I thought. A tenuous RPG connection. And a big part of that is because even if you do watch and you know how the pieces fit together, if you look
impressive if you do.
even if you do, the actual amount of time spent on the game is minuscule for the runtime of the film. So that's part of my rating.
There are
too.
several scenes, though. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff he does attaches back to the game.
It does, but again, if you look at like the actual attachment, you as a viewer, how much you are attached to the game and whatever, it's, yeah. But anyway.
Did you feel like, did it demonize D&D for you?
Maybe if I thought I had more of a connection.
So not very good on that.
No, I mean, I feel like it clearly came across as these people are doing something that's wrong and it's evil. But was that meant to be a larger commentary?
Dr. Evil was running the game.
I know, but really, was that meant to be a larger commentary? I don't know that I got that.
I really do feel like these two films kind of fell flat on the commentary.
Yeah.
I felt more sympathetic for D&D, for Mazes and Monsters, and this one kind of just left me go, I don't know what the heck's going on. Mm-hmm. But speaking of, let's talk about the LARPing connection. Okay. We actually had a decent LARPing connection in the... matter of fact, they decided to invent LARPing in their own way by going into the cave systems. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Here, in a way, you could say the man was LARPing. He was dressing up in various costumes and playing the game in real life. But he was the only one. you know what? I had thought about giving this a higher rating on the LARPing scale than I did, but really and truly, I'd say that's what I would call a 3, because though he is interacting in the game, so to speak, it's not really LARPing, and you really kind of have to stretch out on a limb to call it LARPing.
Right.
So I would probably give it a 3 for its LARPing connection.
Yeah. I think he is dressing up to commit the murders, and his dress up does have connection to the game. However, one could make the argument, first of all, and there's probably a thin line, in a sense. There's probably a bit of a thin line between dressing up for LARPing and just kind of cosplay.
Yeah.
There's probably kind of a thin line there, and one could argue that he might be on either side of that line. But also, the fact remains that, as far as I can tell, make that disclaimer, as far as I can tell, at the end of the day, he is not particularly aware that he is dressing up to play a game. He is aware that he is actually going out and doing this stuff. And so I don't necessarily think you could call it LARPing if he is not playing. If he thinks that it's real.
Well, he does bring this stuff back to the game and expects to be rewarded for it.
Well, again, so it's hard to say. I would argue the connection to LARPing is more tenuous than the connection to tabletop.
Well, yeah.
But I can see how it's there. So I might also do a 3 for that, but kind of a weak 3.
All right, so here's how we break down at the end. So our RPG strength for Skullduggary is a 5 and a 3. So together we've got 5, 6, 7. So a 3.5 in total. So a 3.5 rating as far as how it connects.
Are you sure about that?
7 divided by 2 is... Well, let's see.
Well, yeah. 7 divided... Yes, but...
5. 8. Sorry, you got... I gave it a lower rating for you. I gave it a lower RPG rating. So 4. 4. And the other one, we both gave it 3, so it's a 3. So with that being said, what do y'all think of Skullduggary? Did y'all love it? Is this your favorite D&D film? Let us know in the comments below. We're going to do a little bit of a journey forward, just a slight time skip for our next episode. Like almost 20 years time skip. So, but we're not quite at the really fun stuff yet. So we're going to have some fun, and we're going to see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Ah!